Guys, do you mind if we don't have music? I actually want to hear this.
No, this is free.
Guys, do you mind if we don't have music? I actually want to hear this.
Are we on?
It's great. Find a realtor, a notary, get insurance.
Oh boy. Oh, hold on.
Find a realtor, a notary, get insurance.
Okay, what's
Simcha Yitzchak, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem.
Okay, we'll wait another minute or two. Okay, we'll wait another minute or two. Okay, we'll wait another minute or two. Okay, Rabbi Isai, I guess we'll begin. Yeah. You all hear okay? Somebody could just raise a hand if you can hear.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Okie doke. So I put a few things in the chat just to, again, it didn't come out precisely the way I wanted to. Maybe I could maybe repost them one at a time. I'll be referring to them in the course of the shir. So the first link I'm reposting now is a recording of the Megillah. Why I'm posting that, I'll be speaking about. The second one here is for the Friday morning trip to the theater. Those to register for the Friday morning Megillah reading. And the third one is, oops, 1 second. Yeah, and I don't know if there's any way of erasing this one since I'm the one that put it there, but I guess you can't do that. Okay. Fine. Okay, Rabbi Isai, a lot of inyanim to cover over here, and I'll try to get to all of the questions that were posted, and like to thank Shazam Rabin for helping coordinate things, and Rabbi Dahan for what he did putting together the reading for Friday morning. So there are halachas regarding Purim which are relevant to review every year. There are also special halachas when Purim falls on a Friday. And then there are other sets of halachas dealing with the various restrictions that we have, such as curfew and the ability to gather together and things of this nature. So we'll cover whatever we can. And so let's go in chronological order. Today is Yud Beis Oder, or Yud Gimel. Rabbi Handel's yard site, no Aliyah, good or better for all of his kehillah here in Montreal. And that means Yud Gimel, or Yud Gimel. So tomorrow is Tainus Esther. So Tainus Esther is the fast begins in the morning at 4:23 a.m. And just to point out again that the times for Aleis HaShachar, which are relevant this year, both Thursday and Friday, is different than on most calendars, whether you'll use the Chabad Aror calendar or Maizmanim or the Rabbi Stein's hanging up in the shul, are all different than the ones that the Rabbanim in the city use. Those are the ones on the Vad calendar. They're 14 degrees instead of 16.1, or the different shiurim, whatever Eskasha says. In any case, it's 14 degrees, and when it comes to when the fast starts, it ends up being a leniency. It's a kula because the fast starts later. But when it comes to what time you're allowed to daven and what time you're allowed to read the Megillah, it's a chumrah. So if you look, for example, Aleis HaShachar, let's say on the Zalman Stein's calendar, is 5:11, 5:12 tomorrow. So you have till 5:23. You can eat an extra 12 minutes. And but Purim, Aleis HaShachar, he has is 5:10, and according to the shir that Rabbi Handel Paskin like, and Rabbi Hirschprengel and Rabbi Nizhnik, all the Rabbanim in the city, based on the Papa Rav's calculation, this is 5:22. So that is the time for Aleis HaShachar, 5:23 on Thursday and 5:22 on Friday, as the days continue to get a little bit longer. So in any case, a person is allowed to eat if they make a stipulation when they go to sleep tonight that they want to eat when they wake up. I said 4:23. Yeah, I meant 5:23. I said 4:23. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think I was looking at Plaga Mincha. Okay, so yes, thank you very much. 5:23. Anyway, you can always look at the yeshiva calendar. It has the correct time over there for Aleis HaShachar. It is the most lenient of all the rabbinic tainesim. So therefore, in general, women that are pregnant and nursing don't fast. Even the Chayla Shem Beis Hakana doesn't fast any of the rabbinic fasts. But in comes to Tainus Esther, even less than that is enough not to fast. But any questions should be directed to a Rav, Ba'id Maid. Maybe it's too late to be Ba'id Maid. Whatever the case, especially people that are recovering from or susceptible to COVID, definitely should not be fasting. And many of the laws that we have regarding Tainesim from the Tzemach Tzedek, a time there was a pandemic in the days of the Tzemach Tzedek, and although it doesn't seem that it's the same idea of sakana, they're not eating, but nevertheless, one's immune system should be strong, and certainly people that are recovering or susceptible should make sure that they are healthy. The meaning is to give machzah shekel. Mincha. Our minig is the mincha of Tainus Esther. Others give it before the Megillah reading at night. Now, for those that are unable to go to shul or don't have half, the minig is to give half currency coins. So that would mean in Eretz Yisrael half shkolim, and you give 3 of them different reasons given, whether it's because 3 times it says Trum in the Torah, or because of Oriental Isoy, and so on. Oriental Isoy, Amet Lisoy, that we're a 3-part nation, a 3-part Torah, different Ramazan that we have. Why to give 3 coins? Why putting the 3 coins in 3 times? I don't know where that comes from, but in any case, the idea of giving 3 coins definitely has a mucker. And the 3 coins, the minhag is to use $50 denominations, which would be a $50. Not everybody has $50. So that's why in the shuls usually there's some sort of a bowl there or a box that has $50, 3 $50, and people can be paid. And they put in the money and they take out they put in $1.50 and they're paid. They take out the 3 coins and they bought the 3 coins and they're putting in the three coins for machzah shekel. What happens if you don't have coins like that and you can't get to the shul, whatever the case is? So then you can give $1.50. If you usually give more, you should give whatever amount you gave before, and you can give that amount. And you don't need ataris and darim. And this is a cloud by things which are done every year. I think I mentioned by another shir. But although if a person has a minhag that they do every year and they want to change that minhag, so they normally have to be mater neder, unless they have in mind it's going to be bli neder. However, if they want to keep their neder, but the circumstances prevent them from doing it the regular way, so then they do not need to be mater neder. I'm only going to look at the questions on the chat at the end because I asked that they should be posted first, and I have so I'll just take a look at the end, if assuming there's time, or forever wants to stay on, and we'll do it that way. So in any case, you don't need to be mater neder if every year you use coins or you use American $50, which have a bigger percentage of silver or whatever you happen to do. And this year you can't do it because you don't have that opportunity. So you don't need ataris nadarim. You as soon as you have the opportunity again, you'll do it. So then you just give the amount. There are those people that have a minhag of using the amount of silver that would be for the 3 coins, which is, it's written some svarim, 9.6 grams of silver. But if you do that every year, you should do the same thing this year. But people that are just being paid to the coins for whatever amount, the $1.50, so that you can give $1.50. And there's that everyone said by Sikha that it's a good thing to give it to Bate Knesiyos, Bate Midrashos, but there's nothing specific in halacha about what the machzah shekel has to be given for, and you're just giving a certain amount of tzedakah, and whatever you normally do, if you're giving for your children and the women, it's at what age is a whole discussion in the poskim, but in any case, the giving a machzah shekel, whatever was done before, should be done this year as well. And if it's not being done in the shul because you're unable to, then it won't be done in the shul. And if you can't have real $50, so you'll do it just the amount without the $50. And Yetz Hashem, we'll be with Mashiach Tzidkenu. We'll give real half shkalim, like in order to bring the karbonos tzibur. But as things are presently, so to give the amount for machzah shekel. If you have any questions, if you could maybe either put it in the chat or jot it down, and I will. There's a lot to cover, so I'd prefer to go through it, and then we can go over different questions at the end. Now. Let me go into the time for reading the Megillah. So reading the Megillah l'chatchila is to be done after Tzeis HaKechavim, and the normal procedure is that one does not break the fast until after hearing the Megillah. So Tzeis HaKechavim is 6:06 p.m. So there's an interesting din. The Mechaber brings down a din. That what happens? The women are at home. There's a whole discussion at what point the women start going to shul to hear the Megillah. The Achreinim asks, how is it possible that the women are mochayiv Megillah? They don't hear from the Megillah from the Viber shul. You can't hear. Their children are making so much noise. How in the world can they possibly? They're obviously not Yetzer. And l'chura, they have to be Yetzer. They don't understand what's going on. In any case, many of the women would just stay home and they would be read at home, to read the Megillah at home. And then there's a psulos, unmarried girls for sure stayed at home. So the question is, you have somebody that's staying home, and they have to wait not only till after the fast is over, but since they can't wait, it's very difficult for them to wait until after the Megillah is read in the shul. Then they have to come home and then hear the Megillah, and then only after the shir of 2 Megillah readings are they first going to be able to break the fast. The Shulchan Aruch brings the following eitzah. It brings eitzah that you could read early. In such a case, it's difficult for the person to fast. So read from Plaga Mincha. To read from Plaga Mincha. Now, Lamaisa, that's when the person really needs to eat. Just to break the fast, if you have a person, so one of the questions that was asked, let's say you have a person, let's say the people are you're going to read at home. You're in shul. L'chatchila, one is required to hear the Megillah reading B'tzibur. B'tzibur is with 10 people. B'reivam hadras melech. The Alter Rebbe holds, it's a chiddush, machlekes achreinim. Alter Rebbe holds Reivam hadras melech is even if there's less than a minyan, that the people should be together, because there are days that say that if you have, let's say you have 6 people together, each one has a Megillah and they all know how to read it. Should they each read separately, or should one person read and the other be yetzer with him? And the Alter Rebbe says better one person should read and the other be yetzer, because then you have Bereva Madras Melech instead of everybody reading individually. There are other poskim say Bereva Madras Melech is only when there's a minyan. The Alter Rebbe holds even not a minyan, but it's definitely a din that you're supposed to hear Lachatchila, you're supposed to hear Kriyas Mikra Megillah, you're supposed to hear a B'tzibur. So what's going to happen? So they have people at home that need to hear. It's difficult for them to fast. So they can't have a Suda, but they're allowed to break the fast at Te'ima. They want to have a coffee, a tea, some fruit, even a piece of cake, up to a kebeya. They're allowed to eat something. They shouldn't wash and have a Suda, but they're allowed to if they can't fast for that long, and they're going to have to wait till somebody comes home to read the Megillah for them. So they're allowed to break the fast. If they need more food and they can't do that for whatever reason, so then there's the din Shulchan Aruch to read from Plaga Mincha. We today would use that din. It's very unusual. You should have such a case. People would not, when people had nothing to eat but bread and water, then it's a big problem. It's a big shaila. You have nothing you have to wash. But today we have many other foods available to us other than bread and water. And it's not so common, the necessity. For us, we're not limited with bread and water, but we have a curfew at 8 o'clock. So therefore, the amount of time to be able to read the Megillah is mugbal. And even the Chesed Lo Mem Chatas, to open up the theaters, that only starts Friday, so you don't even have that available on Thursday night. So to get in Mikra Megillah before the curfew, it's a whole discussion about how much does a person have to spend in order to be Makayim a mitzvah. Mitzvahs leis aseh, mitzvahs aseh, ad shlish. Okay, but certainly lachatchila, everybody should be hearing it before and not be out on the street. After 8 o'clock, it's already curfew. So therefore, if there's not enough time to read the Megillah beforehand, one is allowed to be makdim and read by Plaga Mincha. Plaga Mincha is 4:28 p.m. We're talking now about Thursday for the Thursday night Megillah reading. So 4:28. So the people daven, certainly you have to daven mincha beforehand, because if you're treating Plaga Mincha as night, and this is, as we know, the din regarding Kabbalah Shabbos and davening Ma'ariv early and all of these things, it's a very dechik svara to be able to do such a thing, and you only do it if there's no other choice. So this is no problem. We'll read after Plaga Mincha. It's mamish. You can there's certainly time for 2 Megillah readings after Tzeis. We have it much easier. The Alter Rebbe Paskins like the Ge'enim in Utraman, they're going by Rabbeinu Tam Shkir. They don't have time for 2 Megillah readings. It's only time for 1 Megillah reading. We easily have time for 2 Megillah readings, easily, but you have time for 2 Megillah readings after Tzeis. But if you need to do more than that, so then the only breder would be to move it earlier. But you only do that if your mamish can't fit it in. Certainly it should be done after Tzeis, and people are hungry. They can't wait for that extra time period, so they can break their fast if they need. Rather than reading early, but if there's no other breda, the Megillah could be read after 4:28, and it could be done with a bracha. Now, to go further with the din of Mikra Megillah. So the Megillah can be read once you're in the house, and then there's no rush. You're allowed to read Megillah. Chatchila, you're supposed to read it. You're not supposed to eat until you read the Megillah, and you're supposed to read it at the beginning of the night if possible. But one can read up till Aleis HaShachar. So that's the other coolest. Aleis HaShachar Friday morning is 5:22 a.m. So you can, as long as you finish the Megillah, by then you can read the whole night. and you can read up to 522. So let's talk a little bit about how to be Yates in the Megillah under such conditions, what can be done and what cannot be done, and then what do we do about the bracha, and what's with the women and what's with the children, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go with the Seder. There's a opinion that says if you don't, let's start about ways to be Makayim the mitzvah. One thing is clear: if you have a person that is in a situation where it's absolutely impossible for them to hear the Megillah, so then they're putted. If you imagine a person, Rachmana litzlan, they're in a hospital or unconscious, they can't hear the Megillah. What are they supposed to do? Or a person's stranded in the airport in Antarctica. I don't know. And he didn't bring a Megillah. So what are you supposed to do? He's honest Rachmana patri. There's nothing we can do for that person. And we feel very bad. And we would wish that the law was that you could do it with a Zoom or with a telephone or with some other form of electronic digital information. But that does not have any halachic validity. The Rebbe addresses, there are certain Rabbanim who said that there is such a thing, and the Rebbe, most of the instances from the Rebbe actually happen to be about Megillah. The Rebbe speaks about Avdallah and other cases as well. But the Rebbe brings out very clearly that the ones that allowed it is because they don't understand how it is that the technology works. If you would ask a person, for example, would they be able to take, you see the poskim write about a Walkman, you take a tape recorder. You take a tape recorder, Rabbi Schusterman, all of Shalom, used to lane the Megillah in 770. You have a tape, Rabbi Schusterman lane the Megillah. So, okay, you can make it to shul. So you think you'd be Yates, you put on the tape and you read the Megillah. So nobody would think that would be Yates. And if he'd be speaking live through that tape recorder, then would you be okay? It's the exact same thing. It's little pieces of metal and plastic which are vibrating that sound like a human being. So you're not seeing me and I'm not seeing you. And you're not hearing me and I'm not hearing you. I muted you, so I'm not hearing. But if I didn't mute you, I still wouldn't be hearing you. I'm hearing little pieces of plastic and metal in the speakers, which are making noise, which sounds like your voice. And you're seeing something that looks like me and hearing something that looks like me. But just like the tape recorder from Rabbi Schusterman from many years ago, laning in 770, is not Rabbi Schusterman reading the Megillah. It's a tape, which makes it sounds like Rabbi Schusterman reading the Megillah. And obviously, you're not Yaitza with that. So there's no question you're not Yaitza with that. In addition to do this, and many of the Bata Chabad have asked about this, and I discussed it with Rabbi Banon also. And we feel strongly that it's not advisable. And if for no other reason that there are rabbis that are saying that it's allowed, and there's such a tishtush and a bilbul, it's so easy for people to get confused that we don't recommend that. And then Simchas Purim make a Purim fabring and say l'chaim after a curfew. Is it arts and that you could do with Zoom l'chol hadayis. It's no problem. You're not driving anywhere. You have to keep the Gezeira, you have to keep, but aside from that, there's no problem. Okay, so in spite of there's also, it's brought down in some of the Sorim bring down about saying Hallel without a bracha, and that Rabbi Banon gave a shir in French, and I discussed it with him. See, he says no. He says for the Sfardim there's such a thing. So the Machzik bracha brings down Sharet Tshuva Holarichas about saying Hallel if a person doesn't have a Megillah. About saying Hallel, but this is not our minig. The Sfardim have such a minig. I mean, the minig is to read from a Megillah, but if they don't have a Megillah, what do they do? If a person in no way can fulfill the mitzvah of hearing the Megillah, so then they should read for themselves a Megillah from a Chumash. But in order to be Yates in Megillah, we're going to try to figure out a way in order for everybody as possible to be Yates in Megillah. Now, bottom line is that you need a kosher Megillah. And that's why email was sent out to anyone that even if they don't know how to lane, if they have a Megillah available to fill out the online form, if somebody could borrow the Megillah, and especially for Thursday night when it's very, very tight and people will need it, to be able to use the Megillahs. The shaila is, if you don't know how to read the Megillah, so what good is it going to do for you to have a kosher Megillah? So there are a number of ways in which it could help. You could ask somebody that knows how to read to come over and read for you. Okay, but let's say you don't have such a person. Okay, so one thing you have is time. You're not going away anywhere after 8 o'clock. Okay, so if you have a Megillah in front of you and you know basically how to read Lashon Kodesh, you're not a Baal Keda. So what could you do? The Pri Megadim brings down that all the women have a hard time hearing the Viber show. So Kol Isha Chachmas Leiv, he says, should have a Kosher Megillah because they can't hear from the Viber show. She should be able to read the Megillah herself. All the poskim speak about a woman reading to be mates to other women. There's all shayla with a woman, since they're mechuyev and mikna Megillah. If you have a woman that knows how to read the Megillah and the man that doesn't know how to read the Megillah, about the man being yetzer with the woman's reading, so chatchila you definitely don't do it. But strictly al pidin, if that would be the only choice, you do it. But the problem is, what do you need to have a kosher Megillah, and what do you need to have a kosher Kriyas HaMegillah? So to make a kosher Megillah, there are many kulas, many leniencies we have in a Megillah. I'm not going to go into that. Even if a Megillah is, as long as it's not missing an inyan, it's not like a Sefer Torah or a mezuzah or a tefillin that one letter is cracked, that the whole thing is puzzled. Much more lenient the dinim of a Megillah. Mikra Megillah, if a person, there's a few different levels. The Baal Keda lechatchila, he has to know all of the nekudas to read them properly. He has to know where the psukim end, and he has to know the trop. He has to know the musical notation. Okay. If a person doesn't know these three things, lechatchila, you should get lechatchila somebody else to learn. Let's say there's nobody else to learn. So if the person does not know the trop, okay, but he does know the nekudas, he's allowed to read. He's allowed to read, so you won't have the trop. Lechatchila, you should have the trop. You could have a unterzager, you could have people that have simonim, to go on, which is all the different hand motions to indicate the trop. But as long as the nekudas are correct, so then the person, you're yetzer for such a mikra Megillah. Let's say the person doesn't know the nekudas. So if it's something you're not sure whether it was hey ge or hey guy or hey goy, so it's all the same. It's the same person. Okay, so there's different nekudas. You're yetzer if you said Hagoy instead of Hagai or Hagay instead of Hageh. It's all the same person. You're yetzer. But if you said Yoshav instead of Yeshev, and it's both spelled Yud Shin Beis, and it's supposed to be Yeshev, which is present tense, and you said Yoshav, which is past tense, so then you have a problem not being yetzer. You're missing a word from the Megillah. So that's the crucial part. And there are Sfarim that have a list of the crucial areas that it's very easy to make a mistake. There's Ritzpas and Ritzfas. There are poskim that say that if you say the wrong one, the Ritzpas and the Ritzfas with a pay or a fay is two different words. So we have to have those crucial words that change the meaning. Those it's likuba, that they must be said properly. Now, how are you going to say it properly? You're not a Baal Keda. Or let's say you have a woman, she needs to read. Okay, let's say you have people that are in quarantine. Or you have people that they have the virus, they have the COVID. They're not going anywhere. They're not allowed to go anywhere. And they don't know how to read. So what are they going to do? So there's a few possibilities what they could do. All of them require a kosher Megillah. But if you have a kosher Megillah and you have time, okay, so then you have someone help you read the Megillah. Let's say you're by yourself. You can have a chumash. You have a Megillah, a printed Megillah with nekudas next to you, okay? And it's permissible. Again, it's not lechatchila, but we're not talking about lechatchila now. You take a look. Here's the sefer. Here's your Megillahs here. Here's your kosher Megillah, and here's your sefer, your printed Megillah. You look inside. Vahi b'mei achashverosh hu achashverosh. You just look at it. Then you look inside the kosher Megillah, and you read from the kosher Megillah, Vahi b'mei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh, hamelech mehedavat kush, however long you need in order to remember it. You can do a whole pasuk, it's even better. You only go up to the Esnachta, only up to the Esnachta. And then you go, Sheva Vesrim Umeya Medina. You without saying it, you read the words, and then you go back and forth with your chumash, and you do that for the whole Megillah. So it'll take you double the time at least, because you're reading it twice. But as long as you're reading Mitei Haksav from the printed Megillah, you're 100% Yetzer. Now, that can be done by somebody that just knows how to read Lashon Kodesh, and they know how to tell the Ksav Ashuris. They can read it from a printed Megillah. All you need is a kosher Megillah and a printed Megillah and time. Now, if you're better off than that, you can get by B'mei Chashverosh. But when it comes to Ritzvas and Ritzvas and Yeshev and Yoshav, so you have a problem. So if you have another person next to you, and you know when you're looking at a word that you're not really sure how to say it, you just stop and have that other person fill in the word. Now, that other person, if they're going to be Yetzer also, so the din is that you're allowed to say part of the Megillah Baal Peh. Saying the Megillah from a printed sefer, not from a kosher Megillah, is like saying it by heart. It doesn't have validity as far as Mikra Megillah is concerned. So therefore, that's the well-known din. That's every Purim. This is not new for this year. Is if a person missed, let's say that child dropped something on the floor, and you missed a word, so you can read it from the Chumash and you catch up. You can't do it out of order, and you catch up to the Baal Kedem. It has to be in order, so you can't, read that one word at the end. You're not Yetzer. And if the Baal Kedem is too fast for you to catch up, so then you're in trouble. You're going to have to find another Megillah reading where he's holding a little bit further back, and then you can continue hearing from the other Megillah reading. In any case, so if the person gets up to the word Yeshev and he doesn't know what it is, so the one holding the Chumash can say Yeshev. It's no problem. But the Megillah, the person that's holding the printed one, that's correcting the one that's reading, you should hear as much as possible from the actual kosher Megillah. So that's already way number 2. One way is you do it yourself, looking at the Chumash back and forth, like one of these oscillating fans. The second way is you have somebody helping you and correcting you along the way. And a third way is that you could take a recording of the Megillah, and there are a number of them, and I put one of those in the chat box. You have from Chabad.org, Michoslavin, I believe it is, laning the Megillah. You can speed it up or slow it down, however you want. You put an earbud in one ear, and it's not going to make it, you can't hear yourself reading. And you read after, and if you want to put it on pause, and then you hear it and you say it. And again, it'll take longer. But that is brought down. Sefer Piskei Teshuvos came up with this idea. Or maybe he didn't come up with the idea, but he writes it. And then again, we're talking about Shas Adchak. Obviously, lechatchila, this is not the way to read the Megillah. But the b'diavad, when there's no other choice, that's the way to do it. So therefore, there's no problem with a woman doing this. There's no problem with a man doing this. Whoever is able to do it can do it. But you need a kosher Megillah. And there's another eitzah, I don't know, practically speaking, how possible it is. You're allowed to write Nekudas if you're unable to read it any other way, you're allowed to write Nekudas into a Megillah. Sefer Torah, you're not allowed, Chas v'shalom, but you take a pencil and you put in the areas that you don't know. You're allowed, even Mishnah Berurah brings down, you have the same thing for Trop. You could write into the Trop into the Megillah. The Shas Adchak, you're able to do that. I saw somebody brought down, take a clear piece of plastic and put it on the Nekudas and then put it on top of the Megillah. You know who's going to be, put all the Nekudas for, do the Nikud for an entire Megillah. Each Megillah is a little different size. How you can do that for the whole Megillah? But again, all of these eitzes are Shas Adchak, but where there's no other choice, one of these things should be done. Someone asked about what if you're in a different room? Is that okay? So it's not more chomer than Kriyas HaTorah. If you're able to hear it, your Yetzer. The din of the tzedek for you were allowed to read the Megillah even b'yachid, so it's not so much the tziruf of a tzibur. It's preferable to have a tzibur, but it's not necessary in order to be Yetzer the Megillah. There's a machlekes apaskim regarding the bracha after the Megillah. So let's talk about the brachas for a second. So we make 3 brachas on the time of reading the Megillah. We make 3 brachas. Al Mikra Megillah, Shas Nisim, and Shechionu. And the same, so too by day, the final psak from the Tzemach Tzedek is we say Shachiyonu also by day. So the same three brachas are also said by day. At night, the Shachiyonu is for the reading the Megillah, and during the day, it's in addition to reading Megillah, it's also for the mitzvahs of Shalach Manas and Matanas Lev Yenim and Simchas Sudas Purim, which we'll speak about all of these three mitzvahs soon after we finish with Mikra Megillah. Now, those three brachas are the brachas which are before the Megillah. There's also a bracha after the Megillah, Haravis Rivenu, and that there is a machlekes of poskim about whether that is said b'yachid. If it's only an individual, it's said b'yachid. So it says in Sefer Minhagim, Minhagi Beis Harav, and then it writes over there, the Ein Za'ira l'Rabim. This is not for everybody. That the Rebbeim would make that bracha even though they were not with even if they're by themselves, not with a minyan. But it's a machlekes poskim. It goes back to the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, and there's a whole machlekes. And some people make, and some poskim say to make. Some poskim say don't make. The general psak is not to make. Those people that okay, if you have people that they give shalach manas, they're following, the one time the Rebbe said that once they were mafarisim minhag beis harav, it's meant for everybody. Okay, but this said it's not heiror l'rabim, so it seems a little curious that. So I don't know if you have a person that they give every year to Kain Levi Yisrael like the Rebbeim did, and they don't do a bittul Torah like the Rebbeim did, and so on and so forth. The Meiser Nefesh like the Rebbeim did. So by all means, say Aravis Rivenu without any pickbook whatsoever. Otherwise, I don't really see it. There's another machlekes apaskim. If you have a tzibur of noshim, that since they're mechuyev, whether they could say it. There are poskim say that there are 10 women together. If it's a mixture of men and women, many poskim say not. If you have 5 men and 5 women, but if you would have 10 women, then they would yes be able to say it. Now the question arises when you have a man reading as opposed to a woman reading. So there are halachic reasons why, in spite of the fact that women are mechuyev in reading Megillah, and men are mechuyev in reading Megillah, that a woman should not be the one reading the Megillah. I don't know how many women we have that know how to read the Megillah. Obviously, she's going to read it only for women, not for men, and especially you're dealing with the singing and the trop. But lechatchila we don't do that. But the question arises: what bracha should be made? So the din is in general mitat arvus, that if you have, let's say you're reading for another man. Let's say a regular Megillah reading a shul like every year. So the Baal Kedah, whoever is reading the Megillah, he makes them a bracha, and everybody else says Amen. Let's say you ran into shul the last minute and he didn't start reading yet, and you missed the bracha, you missed the first bracha. You're allowed to say that bracha yourself. You're allowed to say the bracha yourself. It's not the Revam Adres Melech, so we want one person to make the bracha and we all answer Amen. Okay, that's the way we do it, but you'd be allowed to say it yourself. Let's say you're in a situation, you're already Yetza, so you were in shul at, 6:06 p.m. Yeah, 6:06, that's the right time, yeah? 6:06. And you read the Megillah Thursday night. And then you go home and you're reading for someone else. Let's say you're reading for a group of men. And they know how to make the bracha. So they should make the bracha. Let them make the bracha. No problem them making the bracha. Technically speaking, there's no problem you making the bracha either. But you were already 8, so yeah, you can have them make the bracha. If it's women, it's even more of a reason that they should make the bracha. Although there are many different minhagim, and we don't have real clarity in what is minhag Chabad in this. We don't have, this is in Haras HaTamimim, there's been discussions through the years about what bracha should be said, where all the pasuk bring down, when the Ramah brings a Yesh Eimrim, in the case that the women, there are those that say they don't have the mitzvah to read the Megillah, they only have the mitzvah to listen to the Megillah. So therefore the bracha should not be Al Mikra Megillah, it should be Lishmeya Megillah. And there are others that say Lishmeya Mikra Megillah. At least 3, there's more, but 3 major girsoyas of what the bracha should be in such a case. So they once brought in nice kashas, and when the Rebbe used to read for the women in Beis Harav, he would say Al Mikra Megillah, and so to do things where the poskim say clearly the other way is one thing, but here the poskim do not. There's no clarity about whether to say Lishmeya Megillah or Lishmeya Mikra Megillah. They say Rabbi Shustim used to say Lishmeya Mikra Megillah, but these are all shmuas, and frankly, all of them are acceptable. So I don't really have a final psak. Personally, if I'm ever in such a position, I say Al Mikra Megillah, because there are many days that say like that, and that's the one that's printed in the Siddur. So if I don't have a compelling proof that it should be different, so this is what it says in the Siddur. So to say what it says in the Siddur, but there's absolutely no problem if you want to have them say Shemeya Megillah. It's no Shemeya Megillah. It's not a problem either, but they should be the ones saying it. Let's say you're reading Megillah for someone who doesn't know how to make brachas. So the din is that just like by a child that doesn't know how to make a bracha, you say Baruch, and the child says Baruch, and you say Ata, the child says Ata, and you say Hashem's name the way it is, because otherwise the child's not going to say Hashem. The child's going to say Hashem. The child says say Hashem's name properly. So you're allowed to say that in order to teach a child, and you say the bracha, and you say Elokeinu with a hey, not with a kuf. So the same thing applies to an adult who's holding by doesn't have the knowledge to make a bracha, or the person doesn't know which bracha to make, whatever the case is. You can say the bracha for them, even though you were already Yetzer. If you weren't Yetzer, so then obviously you're making the bracha even for yourself. You make the bracha Al Mikra Megillah if you're the one that's reading it. The question is it better to avoid this whole machlekes about which bracha to say and just not be Yetzer in shul? So it doesn't seem that that's a halachically acceptable Eitzah, because L'chatchila he's supposed to hear B'tzibur. He's supposed to be Eitzah with a Tzibur, but if for whatever reason you don't have the ability to do that, so then you can make the bracha for yourself, and obviously then the bracha would be Al Mikra Megillah. Let me go on to some of the other the mitzvahs, and we'll take the other questions. I'll take a look and see if there are any other questions over there by the chat. Okay, so Matanis Levyanim, it's a little bit easier to fulfill, because Matanis Levyanim, it's actually, there was a sikha once that Rebbe spoke before it was common at all. I didn't even know how possible it was. That Rebbe said that because of modern technology, you could give tzedakah to a person on the other side of the world, rega kememra. And therefore, on the day of Purim, Matanis Levyanim should get to the poor person on the day of Purim, but that is doable today. There are places that are collecting Eretz Yisrael. You have to do it early in the morning or at some sort of time to make sure that it's going to be received by the poor people. You have to give to two poor people. Maton Neis Lev Yainim is Lashon Rabim, so you have to give at least to two people or two meisters, whatever the case is. And thank you. Zalm Rabin is posting over there in the chat places where you could do this online if for whatever reason you're homebound and you cannot find. Now, this is a mitzvah for everybody over bar bas mitzvah, and for boys and girls over the age of chinuch, it's also. It's also mitzvah din chinuch they should be giving. And obviously, there's, like every year, there are avyanim that are there to collect. But if for whatever reason you're unable to get to them, so then you can give electronically, and that is valid. But you should make sure that it's going to get to the hands of poor people on Purim to verify with them, and that the man should give to two people and the woman should give to two people. There's all discussion in the poskim. Can they say, well, it's husband and wife together, and we'll just give a lot together? So that there's some that are malamet chus on that minig, but Rav Poskim hold that is not sufficient. The woman is allowed, if she's going to, hang around in shul and find a lot of evyanim where the woman is running home to make the suda, so she can make her husband a shliach to give to people, and that's permissible. But she has to designate the Matanas Lev Yenim herself in order to do it. What is the minimal amount to be given? So the minimal amount is a pruta. How much is a pruta? So a pruta is a little difficult to figure out exactly what it is in common currency because it's whatever you can buy something for. So Nita Gabriel writes a nickel because you could take a nickel and you can go to the store and buy candy. I don't know if in Montreal you could buy candy for a nickel. I don't know if you can buy anything for a nickel. Whatever is the smallest unit of currency that you could buy something with, that is a pruta. If you find a poor person and you give them a nickel, I don't really, I wouldn't vouch for your safety after giving them a nickel, because it's taka something. What's the taka the value of it? It should be something which is capable of being bought. Let's speak about Shalach Manas. Shalach Manas is a bigger issue, and I hope all of Anash have answered the tremendous initiative of spearheaded by Madab, with all the shluchim participating, 17,000 Shalach Manas to give out. But there are people that don't want to have this reus necessarily face to face. They don't necessarily want you coming to the front door. And the biggest challenge of that is, well, you could always just leave it there and then knock on the door and stand at a distance. But since the mitzvah is not you giving them something, the mitzvah is them giving something. So how do you manage to do that with people that don't want to meet you face to face? That's the challenge, because for Shalach Manas, ish l'reyehu, so it's ish l'reyehu, and it's manes is lashon rabim. So you need two articles of food to be given to one person. So lechatchila, let's talk about what's lechatchila, and then we'll talk about how far b'shas adchak and the different pidiyevits that we have to deal with, especially in view not only of the short day of Friday, but also in view of the COVID and people not being so cooperative. Different hatatim that are brought by the paskim when the times of their shas adchak. Okay, so let's first talk about lechatchila. Lechatchila, a man gives shalach manas to a man, a woman gives shalach manas to a woman. And lechatchila should be something which is a davar choshuv, preferably something which would be capable of being served at a suda. For the Purim suda, people have what to eat. The Gemara brings down a case where people were poor. They didn't have what to give. All they had was their own Purim suda. So they switched Purim sudas. So each one gave his suda to the one gave Purim suda to the other, and therefore they were yates shalach manas, and each one had the Purim suda. Lechatchila should be a davar choshuv, something to be used at a suda. What's the minimum of the minimum? So when there's a letter from the Rebbe where they were talking about the minimum, it seems the letter they were talking about giving out giving out in New York for children. So the Rebbe said that the shir is a kazayas, for each mana, for each one, and b'shas adchak, even one kazayas for both of them together. Okay, but which is a kazayas is not very big. Kazayas is the volume of 1 fluid ounce. And it speaks in the paskim dealing with the cases of severe poverty, of maybe a beria, if it's a whole grape, maybe it has more of a chshivas. But in any case, lechatchila should be a davar choshuv, a man to a man and a woman to a woman. What about the minig of mishpacha Kohen given to mishpacha Levi? Okay, so the mishpacha is given to the mishpacha. So we have in a pasuk in the Megillah mishpacha, but it's not talking about shalach manas. That's ish l'reyehu. So that's one person to another person. So there are paskim that are malamet schus, that as long as it's enough. Let's say there's 4 things and what the mishpacha given to mishpacha. So then the husband, we can chalk up 2 to the husband and 2 to the wife, and then the Breda, the husband going to the man, the 2 from the wife are going to the woman, even though it doesn't say it's the family. But definitely lechatchila, I'm not going to say that people not yaitz, because people that give out, they spend a lot of time and money giving out shalach manas, and they never once gave one person, the man to the man and the woman to the woman. Lechatchila, to make sure that at least 2 gifts, doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to be, you know, something for the Suda. You take 2 pieces of fruit. It's a fallacy. Don't know where it came from that you have to have 2 different brachas. There's no such thing. There's no problem. It's the same. If it's the same bracha. If it's the same food, so then we get into details. The Rambam says 2 pieces of meat is good enough for shalach manas. But the poskim have a problem with that. At what point, ad mosai, where does one piece end and the other piece begin? And if you have 2 zaysim, you have 1 piece of meat with 2 zaysim, so it counts as 2 pieces. You cut it in half, now it's 2 pieces. Anyway, there's a whole discussion in the poskim that when you have fish and it was cooked with eggs, on top of the fish is 1 meichel, 2 meichel. In any case, you don't need 2 different brachas, but you do need 2 different types of foods. If somebody wants to give dafke, you know, a fliegel with a pulki for chicken, okay, so it has 2 different tastes, maybe. This is white meat, this is dark meat, it counts 2 different things. Lechatchila should be 2 different types of foods. Now, so that's ish l'reyehu, and there's a whole machlekes a poskim, are shutfim allowed to give. So if there's no other choice, so let's say there's you're in a situation where the only way to give it is through a shutfas. So then you have 2 people, Reuven and Shimon can give together to Levi as long as there's enough to have a share for each of them. But that's b'diavad again. Lechatchila should be ish l'reyehu. That's what the pasuk says. 1 person to another person. B'diavad, if there's no other choice, it's different. And that's why, since we're dealing in many cases with a b'diavad situation, what happens if the only one to give to is a woman? Not only that, what if that woman is your wife? So let's say you have a husband and wife who are quarantining, and they're not going anywhere. And they're not interested in giving you shalach manas. You're coming to the door, and frankly, they're quarantining. Maybe they have COVID. You're not so interested in really getting shalach manas from them either, perhaps. Although they say that all the research is showing that it doesn't go over with food, but that's, you know, we trusted the CDC anyway, right? So, so what do you do? Is a husband allowed to give shalach manas to his wife, and the wife to the husband? So this is also a big machlekes aposkim. Most of the day is say not. One of the reasons is he's poshet. If he married her, so he's mechuyev and sharik sus beinosul leyigra. So he has to feed her. So what is he being yaitz? He's giving her food. He has to give her food. It's a chiyuv. Priyas chav. You know, somebody owes Reuven on Shimon money, so then he pays back the loan and says, here, take it for shalach manas. It's priyas chav. It's not what kind of matan is that? Goes in the whole reasons. What are the reasons for shalach manas? I don't have time to go into it. But in any case, if there's mamish no other choice, so the poskim that speak about it say that he should give it to her for a specific purpose, which is what he's doing. So he's saying, I am giving this to you as shalach manas. So that's al derech, somebody giving. If you have a woman called masha kansa isha kansa kana baila, whatever you give to a married woman, a husband acquires it. But if you stipulate that it doesn't belong to him, does that help or not help? That's another debate. But if you say that I'm giving it to you to buy a new pair of shoes, so then you're designating what that money is being given for. So if you're giving something and you're designating its use, so it's been given in such a way that the person should be yetzer. So then if there's mamish no other choice and they're not coming to the door, practically speaking, the way I told some of the shluchim that asked me told them to do it, is if you come, let's say you're going to a house and there's 2 people living there. So you have a bag and it has 2 shalach manas in it. Okay, bring another bag with another 2 shalach manas in it. Okay, and you leave both bags there, and you say this bag is 2 shalach manas. This is from me to you, and from my wife to your wife. You're allowed to be a shliach. There's a binyan scene that says that since it says mishleach manas, that it must be through a shliach. We don't paskin like that, but there are those that hold it's a hiddur to give it through a shliach, and it doesn't have to be midin shlichas, be a cotton. It doesn't have to be somebody that's halachically a shliach. But in any case, you can say that this is for I'm a man, so I'm giving it to you, and this is my wife, and it's giving it to her, and it's fine. Now, but to fulfill the mitzvah shalach manas, so you should give to me. So there's 2 over here, so you just take it on your porch and move it a little bit further to the front step, and you can go back in the house and close the door, and you're going to give me, and one of them will be for me, and one will be for my wife, and like Karav Zel, they don't get close to each other, and you can do the mitzvah shalach manas like that. If they're not willing to do that, so then you should tell them to give to each other and to stipulate, to say that, this is for shalach manas, and that's the best you can do under the circumstances. The law is the food has to be ready to eat. It shouldn't require cooking. The poskim allow cans, even though who knows if the person has a can opener or not, but they could get in there if they really want to. So if it's in a can, that is also sufficient. Now, as far as the Suda is concerned, so the Suda is an issue primarily in Hilchos Shabbos, because the problem is we have all siman out there b'Shulchan Aruch about not being kavei a Suda lechatchila on Erev Shabbos. Even in the morning, a Suda Gedela, you don't even make in the morning. Now, if it's a Suda's mitzvah that the Zman is on Erev Shabbos, if you have a bris and the bris is on Friday, so then you have to make it Friday. You have no choice. So you make the bris. In such a case, you make the bris in the morning. So the Ramah says Shulchan Aruch that the Suda's Purim should be done in the morning. Now the Alter Rebbe says that it cannot be after. You should not begin after Shah Asiris. Shah Asiris is halfway between Chatzos and sundown. Okay, so you take that divide that by half. So Shah Asiris on Friday, Chatzos is 12:08, Shkia is 5:38. The beginning of Shah Asiris this Friday in Montreal is 2:52. That means you have to start your Suda. According to what the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch, you have to start the Suda by 2:52. You should use at least a kazayas before 2:52. There are many poskim. However, the Alter Rebbe doesn't talk about Purim. And since Purim Suda is even more bispashtus, and you have an inyan of Adliyada and so on and so forth, so many of the poskim say that you have to be momach, because why is the Ramah writing by Baker and over there the Shah Asiris is sufficient? So there are many poskim that write, yeah, the Shah Asiris is okay. You're not talking about Purim. So the Pashta halacha is we don't have a clear mucker to say differently that you're allowed to eat after Chatzos. There once was a sikh and the Rebbe said, "Madam nish cooking off the zeger." You should eat in the morning. You don't have to look at after Chatzos like it's Daven Shachris or whatever it is, that you're being careful eating the Afkamen about Chatzos. But the Ramah, the Psak in Hilchos Megillah, in Hilchos Purim, the Ramah says you should eat the Suda by Baker. There are many poskim that say B'chal all time, no matter what day of the week Purim falls out, it's better to eat the Suda in the morning. Practically speaking, there's the ganze farnem of Sudas Purim, and then there's the halachadik, the minimum of Sudas Purim. So anybody that, but they want to Mifsayim as a Bachar, remember what kind of Sudas Purim did you have already? You're running around doing Mifsayim, you ate up. You have two Zaysim. So you should be able to make a Al-Til Shaddai and be able to call it a Suda. L'chatchil you're supposed to wash. There's a letter from the Rebbe, Nigras Chelakei, where the Rebbe questions B'chal, whether according to the Alter Rebbe, Yamamish need to make a Suda with Lechem, but Lamaisa, the Rebbe said many times in Mugat Gesiches that the minig is to make it to wash and have a Suda with Lechem. The whole discussion whether you need Basar or you don't need Basar. Certainly you should have Basar L'chatchila, but halachically speaking, you could have two Zaysim. People are going to eat breakfast anyway after they hear the Megillah and they come back from shul. You're going to eat something, so take another few minutes and wash. And you'll say Al Nisim, and if anything happens later in the day, you Yetzer Sudas Purim, and then you did like the Ramah said, you had it. You want to make a bigger Suda later on? Mateva Manoim, go and Adliyada, all you want. But again, the halacha is to start the Suda Matzad El Chashabes and Alter B'Shulchan Aruch before Shah Asiris. To start the Suda before 2:52, and you can eat more, but then you shouldn't fill up in such a way that you don't have an appetite to eat the Suda on Friday night, but lechatchil the Ramah says should do it in the morning, and that's certainly the best thing to do. Now, there's the famous din of Peres Mapam Makadish, and that's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Now, Alter Rebbe brings it down in Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe says Shulchan Aruch because of the various halachic complications involved, that a Baal Nefesh should not eat after Shkia. That if your meal goes all the way till your shkia, that you finish eating then, and you're not Peres Map Makadish is just keep eating. You're eating Purim Suda, Shabbos came, time to make Kiddush. Cover over the challah, Peiris Mappa, Makadesh, take out a cup of wine and make Kiddush. What's going to be the Breit Pri Hagafen? What's going to be, you're going to say Ritzayeh or Alanissim or both? And what's going to be with the Meitzi? And people get confused. And this one didn't have wine before. So he has to make a Breit Pri Hagafen, and you already had a Breit Pri Hagafen, and you're not going to say, and how they don't know whether it be Yetze or whether they're going to make it with their own bracha before, if the one that's being Makadesh not, all different sorts of complications. Anyway, Alter Rebbe says Shulchan Aruch Al Pi Nigla, Bal Nefesh doesn't do it, and it's known all the years that Rebbe did not, even the times when it would be very frequent that Rebbe would make the Fabring and Yom Tov Sheni, that say Rosh Hashanah would fall on Thursday, Fridays, the Fabring from the end of Rosh Hashanah, from Simchas Torah, would go into Shabbos, and the Rebbe would tell somebody to be Peiris Map Makadesh, but the Rebbe wouldn't say L'chaim after the Shkia. And then Tavshem Mem Dalet, I believe it was, they made a whole bilbul with the announcement to Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe said Simchas Torah, that's the end of Peiris Mappa. Later on, I think it was Mem Ches, the Rebbe said there already became the minig in Chabad not to be Peiris Mappa. So that's not our minig. So there are shluchim that do it, but they have an exception to the rule because otherwise the people are not going to be Makayim Mitzvahs Purim. So since halachically it is an eitzah, as long as they learn the halachas and know how to do it properly, so they're allowed to do that. But for regular anash, this is not an eitzah. The Rebbe says it's no longer our minig. So again, lechatchila, a person should be eating in the morning. If not, it must be before Shah Siris, the least to begin, which is 2:52. As far as other dinim of Purim, we don't do malacha on Purim. And it says a person that does malach, even if they have a heta for it, doesn't see a siman bracha for it. What about things you do out of Shabbos, like cutting your nails or getting a haircut? So there's a whole machlekes a paskim whether you can get a haircut on Purim. So it's better to avoid. But cutting nails, the paskim allow. It's not such a big malacha. It's not going to be hesach hadas. One of the questions that was written in on the form was to go through for Avelim Rachmal Etzlan, what are the dinim? So Ava goes to shul to hear the Megillah. Basically, for a person that's in Avelis, it's like Shabbos. So there's still Avelis B'Farhesia. There's Avelis B'Tzina, but not B'Farhesia. So the person, even if they would be in Shiva, they're not sitting on the floor, or they wear regular shoes. They don't wear torn clothing and so on. But limaratei, the other things which are prohibited of B'tzina apply on Purim. As far as Shalach Manas is concerned, the person should send one Shalach Manas to someone else, and Matanas Levyanim to fulfill. About sending that person, so that's a whole machlekes apaskim, and especially if you have teachers, if you have if you have a teacher that's in Avelis. So there are certain cases where it says that people in a public position that you can send them shalach manas, but it's brought down a number of svarim. They bring down that both in Tavshin Chaf Hei and in Tavshin Mem Ches, to bring down from Rabbi Berel that the Rebbe said that you go out to tell people not to give shalach manas. Anyway, it's a machlekes apaskim, but if the shalach manas was sent, then the person is allowed to accept it, and it is allowed, according to most of the apaskim, to send it in such a case to the family. So if the Rabbi Arpachshad is in Avelis, so you can send to Mishpachas Arpachshad, and even though they might know that it's going really to him, and that's why it's being sent to the Mishpacha, but some say that it shouldn't be done, but many of the poskim allow it. So I think that would be a intermediate permissible procedure to do, and anybody that's in Avelis Rachmal Hasan does give Matanas Levyanim. So I think I covered what was on the spreadsheet. So now let me look over here at the chat, see if there are any questions. And if I can get through these questions, then I can open up to other questions. Okay. Okay, what does susceptible to COVID mean? Can a healthy person over 70 fast? If you have any questions, ask your doctor. If there's any question that the fasting is harmful for them, then you eat pachas mikashir. The whole inyan of pachas mikashir, by the way, applies to people that are not. If a person is sick, legitimately sick, so then there's many of the poskim write that the whole idea of eating pachas mikashir only applies when people were healthy and trying to avoid the pandemic. That's what the Tzemach Tzedek was talking about. But there are other poskim that say that it even applies to a chayla she'en b'sakana. But many of the people today that are eating, they're not mamash chaylim. And again, as I said before, for Tainus Esther, one doesn't need to be mamash chayla. The Ramah is more lenient when it comes to that. But if a person's in doubt, they can certainly do pachas mikashir. If a person can go to shul to send a shliach to machzeh shekel, yes, that's okay. So I had the 3 links over here. So if anybody has a Megillah that they're willing to lend out, the link is there. If you want a place for the women, I don't know if they're allowing men over there in the theater on Friday morning, but they still have places. Last I checked, they still have places available for Friday morning Mikra Megillah over there in the Cary Square. Okay, fine. So here we have a list over here of different places where you can electronically do your Matanas Levyanim. Don't forget about the real live Levyanim also. They're also there. E-transfers, mices, overheads. Okay, time zone issue of a Yisrael giving it before it is day here. So it seems to go after the Makabel, because the tzedakah is being given to the makabel. There's all discussion in the poskim about a person that's sending it at a time that they're not. The case brought in the poskim was not a time zone issue, but if you're sending it, you're sending whether it's shalach manas or matanas levyanim, and Purim is Friday, and you're sending it out on Wednesday, and somebody's going to deliver it there on Friday. When you gave it, how are you being makayim the mitzvah? Because the bachal was Wednesday. I mean, who says it was? But since the Makabel is getting it that day, so that would seem to be both for Matanas Levyanim and Shalach Manas seems to be the conclusion of the poskim that it's okay. Now, it would be the same thing for somebody from Eretz Yisrael giving a Montreal, that would be okay. If you're in Montreal giving Eretz Yisrael, and by you it's Purim in the afternoon, by them it's Shabbos, so then they're not getting it on Purim. How does a shliach give machzis a shekel for a mishalech? I mean, you can just give tzedakah. You can just put in a pushka in your house also to machzis a shekel. There's no limitations on machzis shekel in the same way that you have for matanas levyanim. You can just give that amount. So you can give that amount, tell the person to give it to, and they can change it for the 3 shkolim. I mentioned many poskim say to start the suda before chatzos. Was that on purpose? No, I said many times that the Ramah says you're supposed to make the Suda in the morning. I said it a number of times. But Chatchila, you should make the Suda by Baker. By Baker is before Chatzos. What's the point of sending so many Shalach Manas before Purim for children, school, and teachers? Okay, so I didn't mention there's a whole discussion in the Achreinim. What's the reason for Shalach Manas? Shainim even. What's the reason for Shalach Manas? One opinion is the people should have what to eat by the Suda. So and make sure they have food for the Suda. So you send Shalach Manas. The other one is to increase Avos Yisrael and Reus. Somebody wrote a sefer with all the different nafkaminas la'alacha between these 2 reasons. He said if you say the Trumas Hadeshin, the reason of Trumas Hadeshin, which is the first reason Mitzat Suda, the halacha comes out like this. If you say Shlomo Alkabetz, he wrote a sefer on Purim also, and he brings down the inyan of Reus, of friendship, and Avos Yisrael, so then the halacha comes out different. So that's the idea of sending a lot of Shalach Manas. So it says the poskim bring down, it's better to take care of the poor people, be more mahadir in the Matanas Levyanim and the Shalach Manas, but Shalach Manas also the inyan of Reus and Avos Yisrael certainly a big thing. Yeah, laundry on Purim should be avoided, should be done beforehand. B'chal, it's a big shaila anyway, doing laundry on Friday. The Konas Ezra is to do laundry on Thursday. So there's a whole discussion, now that they used to have to go down to the river and pound rocks, to wash the clothing. Now you just throw in the washing machine. What's the big deal? But there are those that say there's Takana Sezra and still shouldn't be done Erev Shabbos. You have nothing to wear, it's a different story. But to plan out that B'chlal on Erev Shabbos, even if it's not Purim, to make laundry day out of Shabbos, is many of the poskim say it's not allowed. Okay. Fine. Nick, it is. We should have it says that in Sicha Yemis tonight. So Rebbe said Purim Toshin Tezvov. So Rebbe said that we say at the end Vagam Charvena Zochel Latei. What's make a whole thing? Vagam Charvena. What's the whole thing? Charvena. So Charvena was Eliyahu Novi. So you have to end Vagam Charvena. Charvena that Eliyahu Novi should come and he'll be Mabash of the Gula, and then we have the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, and that not only the Gula from Purim, but the Gula through Mashiach Tzidkenu. Freilich and Purim.
Freilich and Purim, thank you.
Yasher Koyach, thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Gesund.